Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Today the topic of our today's webinar is From Pitch to Proof, a really nice name. So we will talk about how agencies can win with server-side tracking in 2026. So I'm Serge. I'm sales and partnership lead here at Stape. You all probably know Dan by now. He's our tracking and measurement lead. And we are also joined by some serious technical experience here by Alex and Vlad, our data tracking experts. Feel free to ask all of your questions here in the Q&A session during the webinar and also during the Q&A session that we'll have right after the webinar. So what you'll get after the webinar, we get asked about this a lot, so I will repeat it a couple of times during the webinar because some of the people will be joining later. So first, you will definitely get the recording of this webinar. You will also get the written guides and links to resources and this same presentation that I will be sharing and then. And the fun part is we will also be giving away 3 exclusive Stape t-shirts for the 3 best questions in the Q&A session. So make sure to ask questions and make sure to ask great questions. Now, regarding the session outline, it's pretty straightforward. It consists of 3 blocks. First, I will walk you through the pitching framework for agencies and from what we see, how our partners sell server-side tracking, why it's needed for clients and stuff like that. We will go over some key client pain points. We will go over the usual objections and how we handle them. And of course, we will make sure that you are equipped with all of the needed tools and resources to build a stronger pitch. Then we'll tell you more about how you can provide a return on investment and measure results, what to concentrate, what to highlight in Stape Analytics, what to track in your ad platforms and stuff like that. And then we will move forward to the Q&A session to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm sure that the majority of you know what Stape is, but yeah, just to remind you, Stape is server-side tracking. And why we say that? Because we are truly a one-stop shop for everything server-side. We have the infrastructure in place. It's a fully managed infrastructure. So we basically host your client's server-side GTM for you. So you don't need to worry about hosting maintenance and stuff, and your client don't need to do it either. We also have great product with enablement tools, with platform integrations, and with some really cool enterprise features. And of course, it's support from our 24/7 support team available for all of you via chat and via email. Some exciting news, we have recently turned 5, and at this moment we serve for more than 200,000 clients in over 100 countries, work with 500 plus great agency partners, and I'm sure that some of you definitely joined this webinar here today. And I'm also proud to share that we process more than 10 billion requests on a daily basis at this point across 25 server locations, and of course, adhering to the best security and privacy standards. But now let's get back to the main agenda of today's webinar. So the pitching framework for agencies. This is the blueprint or the typical flow of how the sale is made, right? It's applicable to virtually any industry at this point. But it's like classics, right? So you identify the pain or the need of your client, you present the right solution for them, back it up with proof, handle the objections. Maybe it's not at the end, but at some point on this flow, and then you have a successful sale. So we will start with the most common client pain points and how SST can solve them. Just to quickly share the logic of this slide, you will also get this presentation after the meeting, as I mentioned. But here you have the pain, you have some questions to ask if you want to delve deeper into the question and to get more details from the client to address their need better. You also have the block which explains why the SST is the solution for this specific pain, and you also have the what to expect section with expected results. So here our first pain point is broken attribution and inconsistent numbers. So in cases where your client sees too much direct or unassigned traffic, in case your G4 and CRM shows different numbers, server-side tracking can be a good solution here because it restores missing events and stabilizes attribution accuracy across tools. So it, of course, leads to fewer tracking gaps, clearer channel performance, and more reliable ROAS reporting. Second pain is data loss from ad blockers and browser restrictions. It's actually one of the main selling points most of the time, at least in the cases that we see. So obviously, here SST is a great solution because it routes everything through your own domain. It avoids ad blockers and browser limits, and it restores data that client-side tracking drops. Well, not as necessarily that the client-side tracking drops, but it just gathers more data because of the technology, right? And it leads to more events captured, more accurate reporting, and better campaign optimization. Probably my favorite one is compliance risks and lack of data control. It's one of the main and most common pain points in industries such as healthcare, fintech, insurance, etc. And SST is like the greatest solution here because essentially you get a lot more control over data that you collect. You get all the possible additional actions that you can do with that data. You can enrich that data. You can anonymize that data, and make sure that you pass the data in a way that's compliant with your industry standards. Get clear audit trails just in case something happens, and of course be compliant with the industry standards. Pain 4 is weak optimization and retargeting signals. So in case your client meta event match quality is low, in case campaigns feel unstable and all that stuff, SST is the great solution because it sends richer, clearer conversion signals to ad platforms, which leads to higher EMQ, lower CPA, and stronger retargeting. And pain 5, we have included here also. So for some businesses, the majority of their data is in the offline space, let's say. And server-side tracking, as you know, unifies online and offline events into one data flow, which leads to unified funnel view, enriched user profiles, better ad optimization, and more complex attribution. But server-side tracking is not just for fixing some problems. It's actually for something beyond that, right, Dan?
Hi everyone. Again, this is where I wanted to chime in. First of all, Serge, thank you for that, outline and overview. The point I wanted to concentrate on is one of your selling points, and of course, this will be very subjective based on the customer you're talking to, but one of the overlooked sort of capacities of server-side tracking is we all tend to think about it as only a proxy for your browser events, right? So we think about it as a solution for ITP, as a solution to bypass ad blockers. And I think not enough attention is paid to the fact that you just get additional capacity to your tracking stack. So you now have this whole server running in the cloud as part of your tracking infrastructure. Most of your tracking, again, coming from the browser, will be now proxied through this system. What server-side allows you to do is also connect other channels that are non-browser channels to your existing tracking stack. So you can connect your CRM, you can connect your some sort of your data lake, maybe your inventory system, some third-party platform, regardless of what it does, that also is involved in in your funnels. So the big point, and this may not be very evident from the get-go, especially to a customer who's maybe considering it, is not only you're fixing a ton of stuff on the browser, you're essentially expanding your tracking capabilities to beyond the browser. And now you can pass all of that data through the same stack. So that's very kind of comfortable for maintenance and organization. And even the signal that is coming through your browser can now be enriched. You can now pick up lifetime values from your CRMs. You can do profit on ad spend reporting to your ads destinations, Facebook, Google Ads, what have you. So I want to encourage everyone to think about it not only as a solution for all known browser problems, but also as kind of a tool that just allows you to introduce so much more into your whole tracking game. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree with that. And to expand on that topic a little bit more, is like we also got your back with some additional tools and resources that will help you build a stronger pitch. So not just some, advices and generalized ideas about the benefits of server-side tracking that we all know, but with some practical and useful tools that you can use in the future. So the very first one, and it's like the foundation for a lot of agencies that we work with, probably for the majority of agencies that we work with at this point, is the tracking checker. So it essentially allows you to run a quick audit of any website out there within like 1 or 2 minutes. It will give you a really complete report of the tracking and analytics state of that website, and then we'll show it to you later in the webinar, like in more detail. But to mention it here in a couple of words, a lot of agencies that we work with, they actually use it to prepare for the discovery call and send it in the recap email. Maybe even scan their clients, their leads website and compare that website result to the result of their competitors, right? And they can show them that, hey, this and that can be improved. Your competitor is winning here in this and that domain. So you got to really catch up. And this is definitely a thing that can help you build a stronger pitch. Um, Stape calculator. Often we have requests where the client is like, hey, I'm not sure how to calculate what plan I will need. The agencies come back to us and say, hey, it's not really clear, like what is the request and all that stuff. If it's not clear enough and you want to be as accurate as possible with estimation the right plan, you can go to the Stape calculator, insert like the monthly count of your GE4 events, and it will basically tell you what plan will be the best plan for you. But if that data is not available, let's say your client does not have any analytics whatsoever, they don't know how many requests, how many events they have per month. Um, a useful workaround here will be to check how many monthly visitors they get at their web page and multiply that number by, let's say, 10, right? So it will give you that more or less precise forecast of what their plan should be. But always feel free to use Stape calculator. It's pretty accurate on its own. And of course, Stape freemium plan. For some of you who use Stape, you already know that we have a free plan. It basically allows you to test almost all the features that we have, but it sets a limit on the monthly requests that you can process. Nonetheless, that's enough for the majority of the agencies that we work with. So a small advice here, right, from some of the agencies. You can go with the freemium plan for the client who says, hey, I don't want to commit right away. It seems like a substantial investment for us, so why would we buy it and stuff? You can just go with the free plan, run a 2 to 4 week test with just page view events, and use Stape Analytics to show how many events were recovered and how much the data has improved, right? So again, it's all free. You can try it, run a test, show it to your client, and say, hey, just let's go. Why not? And of course, all of that leads to the great outcome and how you can back it up with proof, right? We have many success stories at this point. We have posted it on our social medias, on our website. So essentially, everything that we just spoke about leads to improvement. It leads you to 36% more Google Ads conversions tracked. It leads you to increased ROAS and CPA reduction and all this stuff. So you can also reach out to us in case you have some really nice success stories with your clients. We'll be happy to post this. We'll be happy to include you in this slide as well in the future. But if we talk about if we come back to that initial flow of how the sale is made, right, we will definitely face some objections along the way. So here I would like to highlight how we can actually handle them confidently. So the first objection, and it's a really common objection, I'm sure across all industries and all the salespeople face it, we don't need this right now, right? And yeah, it's we've heard it too many times at this point. So first of all, if you reached out to us, you probably at least interested in this. If we have outreach to you and you are on this call or even replying to this email, you are also somewhat interested. So but coming back to the server side, it's not just a nice to have thingy at this point because the whole game has changed. Safari and iOS, they block and shorten your cookie lifetime today, and it affects up to 40% of users in some industries. We all know that Meta, TikTok, and Snapchat, they don't optimize campaigns efficiently if it's just based on the browser signals. And all the countless reasons and pain points that I mentioned in the past, like compliance, like ability to have control over your data, is something that you definitely need to consider right now. So that's how you basically go about that objection, the first one. The second one is why should we pay? Client-side tracking used to be always free. It is still free, right? But for better things, it all comes with some price, at least, right? With server-side tracking, if you want to have more conversions tracked, if you want to have more stable attribution, if you want to have lower CPA, stronger ROAS, you definitely have to make an investment, which will allow you to get all of these perks and all of these results. But in any case, again, it gives you a huge competitive advantage over your competitors who don't use server-side tracking. And in the long run, if you run paid ads, for example, and you invest $1,000 into ads, paying a small fee per month for just hosting of your server-side tracking container, it will make your marketing, your ad budget work a lot more efficiently. You will get more leads, you will get more exposure, and all these great things. Objection number three, and I'm sure you guys have faced it a lot of times, and it is that it will take too much time and effort to switch. I'm sure you definitely know how to tackle this objection because you provide implementation services and all that stuff. But essentially, it's not that big of a lift most of the time because first, you can use setup assistant and integrations with CRM and CMS apps to make the setup a lot faster and more efficient. Agencies, great partners like you can definitely speed up this process drastically for the client. The migration can be phased, so you can start with just key events and extend to the full implementation later. So it's not like your client may envision it in their mind that, hey, we need to make a revolution right now and to switch just like that. It's typically not what happens. You first implement key events and then extend later. And of course, we got your back at all times, not even mentioning the tools that we have to build the pitch and to start providing these services more efficiently. But we also provide 24/7 human support and education materials to help with all kinds of cases. And we are always just like one email away to the support team who will be able to help you with any questions. Is this legal? Also, an objection that we get sometimes, at least. Well, it's a lot less than it used to be in the past, but still, the answer is yes, it's legal and it's safer than client-side tracking, actually, because as I mentioned in the past already in this presentation, that you get essentially more control over the data that you send further, right? So instead of just sending it straight from the client side, you first send it to the server. You can enrich it, you can anonymize it, you can basically tailor that data to the point where it's compliant with GDPR, with HIPAA, with DORA, and all these great certifications. And on the processing side of things, it's essentially our responsibility to make sure that the processing part of this process goes as smoothly as possible, and again, adhering to all these great certificates and industry standards. Wouldn't it be better to use GCP for hosting? That's a really interesting objection that we get a lot of times. Wouldn't it be better? Well, in some cases, if it makes more sense to you, maybe if you have enough internal resources to deploy everything, to maintain everything, to look after scaling, to develop all these new stuff that you want to have, maybe it makes sense for you to even go with GCP. But if you want to basically pass the hosting and pass the entire infrastructure maintenance to someone else, like Stape, who does fully managed tracking infrastructure, we can definitely do it and support you with everything that I mentioned before. Plus, Stape is truly a GDPR compliant solution because if you have any legal people in your team or any security people in your team who are concerned, we have EU legal entity, we have EU owned and EU registered servers, we have all these data processing agreements with just EU data sub processors. So it's a great solution overall. You want?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 points I want to add to this. Right, first about the maintenance, right? So I imagine there should be at least one person in the room who thought, well, I'm good enough to like go through the manual and whip up a server on GCP, and I'm sure you are. It's not like rocket science at the end of the day, but you should be considering not your initial implementation. You should rather be considering ongoing maintenance and handling the scaling, handling the traffic spikes, handling the situations where something goes wrong in the middle of the night or something like that, right? Where then your resource of, well, I'm going to go ahead and cowboy it with a manual, well, probably is not enough. So always think about the sort of bad scenarios rather than, oh, I can do it on my own. And the second thing, just to elaborate a little bit about EU and GDPR. So you can pick a European zone on Google. That doesn't quite do it in full, right? That's GDPR compliant enough, but you will have certain customers, certain industries, certain countries, which will require your servers, not only your servers to be physically in EU, they will also want the servers to not be owned by an American company or an American affiliated company, which if you host on EU with Stape, you get all of that. Not only you work with a European legal entity, not only the servers are located in Europe physically, but those servers are also provided by a European company, which may be a big deal, especially if you talk to like financial sector, insurance, banks, all of that goodness.
Yeah, yeah, and also to expand on that, I forgot to mention the costs and everything because the costs and its unpredictability on GCP is also a big topic. We could have focused on it a little bit more. So on Stape, you get a fixed price depending on which request bracket you use, right? So it's not like you're going to be charged X amount of money this month and Z amount of money next month because of the logs or some traffic spike or something like that. So on Step, you will not need to worry about basically with a fixed price, unlike on GCP. But to kind of wrap it up, how can Stape support your pitch? We have many different options here. First and foremost, of course, is 24/7 human support. Always feel free to reach out to us via email, via chat. We are always here to help answer any questions. Legal questions and some legal aspects can also be covered by our team. So in case you have a client who's like, yeah, that would have been great. Everything sounds great. We are totally convinced by your pitch. We definitely want all of these benefits, but we know for sure that our legal team will not just pass it. You will not pass our security review. You will not pass our legal review. We are pretty confident that we will pass it for sure, because that's what we do on a daily basis. So if you have any legal questions, if you want to sign any specific agreements like BAA, for example, for HIPAA industry, or if you want to sign DORA addendum to be DORA compliant, feel free to reach out to us. We are here always to assist. Same with procurement, right? Procurement can be a big hurdle on your way to signing a big client. Same stuff, right? They say, hey, we are totally convinced, our department likes it, but you will never pass the procurement or it will just take forever. You can just refer those guys to us and we take care of everything from start to finish, the entire procurement process, all the vendor selection criteria, questionnaires, and all this stuff. We can definitely cover it for you. And assistance with pitching. For example, you have a client and you definitely want to run a great presentation for them, run a demo, answer all the questions in just one meeting, and you need assistance from some of us. definitely reach out to us, reach out to the support team, reach out to your partner manager. We are happy to assist you with that in some cases, for sure. And of course, help with onboarding. If you have any questions, as I mentioned, it kind of goes back to the 24/7 human support point. Ask any questions, chat, email. We are happy to help. And now, when it comes to proving the ROI and measuring the results, I'm giving the stage back to Dan.
Right. Again, thank you, Serge. Hi, everyone. So let me quickly share my screen, and I will finish this up. I think this is where we left off. Right. So we kind of high level went through the how you pitch it, some of the objections, right? And there was a lot of questions in the Q&A already, which, by the way, I'm going to answer all of that, but a lot of questions which will touch on what I'm going to show you next, right? So how do you then demonstrate to the customer that has actually invested into this whole thing and bought your services and bought a hosting on Stape, the uplift and the results of it, and the general sort of validity of a thing? I would split it into like two categories. I'm going to show you two things on Stape that you can and should be using, and then some obvious stuff around the platforms which are outside of Stape, which can also be your basis for proving you right, essentially. Right. So first of all, Serge mentioned the tracking checker, right? This is a tool which I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. So you plug in any URL, it gives you a report which gives you score, arbitrary score, but it gives you like a score on the state of your tracking, the state of popular pixels, platforms, destinations, whatever, your cookie lifetime situation, your ad blocker visibility, and well, if there's some client-side tags, we will recommend to switch to the server-side, of course. So we talked about how you can run this scan and use it as a pitch. You can also use the same scan to show that, hey, we've did this, and now we have this beautiful result. Our score is green. We have only maybe a few issues to address, even if we have to, right? So that will be tool one I'm going to show in a second. Tool number two is we have a built-in thing called Stape Analytics. Traditionally, I need to tell you this is not a analytics suite per se. This is not a replacement for your GA4 or anything like that. This is a handy dashboard which is designed specifically to help you show the uplift that server-side tracking has brought into the customer's life and why it's worth, keep on paying for it. So done with these two slides, let me quickly switch to the checker itself. So checker is pretty simple. Some of you may have seen it. There's this whole landing page. The only thing you need to do is to plug in a URL, click a button. This initiates rather the scan. You can see takes up to 2 minutes because we need to test multiple scenarios. We're not gonna wait for it. I already ran these scans before the webinar, so I'm gonna show you two. So in front of you is harris.com, picked off by random. There's no, this is not an advertising. There's no affiliation, whatever. I think we did it in preparation to Measure Camp in London. And so just to show you the idea of the report, right? So you have four categories. Again, the scores are very arbitrary. They're not necessarily like tied to, your understanding of things. So we have analytics, ads, cookie lifetime, and page speed. And you can see this huge website has given us 19 out of 100, which is not that great. So if we scroll down and start exploring, we will find that the only server-side thing these guys have is Google Analytics 4. They also have it client-side, which can be explained by either them having a very faulty setup, or maybe they are running two properties in parallel, which again can have its issues. But in principle, you can see that most of their tracking is client-side, Meta is client-side, well, GA4, which is discussed, Google Ads, Floodlight, Pinterest, Rakuten, Microsoft ads are so far only client side, so you were treating them as okay. So definitely there's things to improve here. And if you click on a button, you normally get this whole breakdown, a video, some links to supporting articles on what can be done to fix this situation. And you will have such a thing for every single issue, let's call it, every single nuance detected. And yeah, there will be actionable things what do you call it, suggestions that you can use to sort of fix the issue, and you will see what kind of a score improvement that gives you. At the end of the day, you want something more than 80, I think, would be very practical. Right. So trackers, main tracking cookies detected. The important part here is the lifetime. So for instance, FBP, FBC, since this is a client-side tracking that they're running in Safari or in Firefox or in other obscure browsers, their FBC will live for 1 day because this is a known click ID set with JavaScript, will be stripped within 1 day. FBP being the browser ID, because it's not click ID, 7 days is what you get. So obviously there's improvements here. And the only cookie that sort of lives well here is the FPID from Google Analytics because that's the only tracker that the company has server-side, at least, or at least right now. Recommended actions, like I said, and well, the the scanner tool is constantly being improved, so you will eventually find that there's like more reporting here, some comparisons, some summaries. But for now, I'm thinking all of this stuff would be good enough to demonstrate to your customer, right? This is the topic of the webinar, to demonstrate to your customer that there's certainly something to be taken, to take care of. And you have all of your explanations here. You have actual ready-made sort of pitches and propositions to just, to inform your conversation. Now, but we talked about how we want to use it not as a pitching tool only, but also as like proof of that, something is okay. So I'm just going to show you the Stape one. We're not showing our score. This is, oh, we do now. Oh, okay, cool. 89, right? You see, so nobody's perfect. So we have 100 and analytics because we are running client-side GA4, server-side. I apologize, server-side. We are having only 72 on ads because you may notice that we don't run a client-side pixel for Meta as well as we don't run client-side pixel for Reddit. So our own system is telling us, what the hell are you doing? You should improve this because that's what the platforms in question will tell you to do. That's what they will call the most optimal setup. And again, I know there's a few questions on that in Q&A, which I'll specifically address during Q&A, so stay tuned. So you can show them then, right? Hey, we've did this and that, and you can now see how our score has improved. We are now good in this area, good in this area. This is properly working, and hopefully after your work, the amount of these recommendations should be minimal, more or less, such as in our case. There's two suggestions to add client-side pixels, and there's one where it's just general optimize your page speed because it could be better. Again, repeating myself, there's even a question about page speed, I think, so we'll talk that definitely. So this is the tracking checker and how it can also empower you in your conversations with the customers. The second tool I mentioned here on the slides was analytics. So let me show you that. I have a few of them here from our demo accounts. They have a bit of a different stats, so I might be switching between one and another. But just to give you the general idea. So the periods of reporting here are 10, 30, and 90 days. We will only show you this in aggregate. There's no, like I told you, this is not really an analytics suite. This is not built for you to just analyze your data. This is mostly a dashboard for you to understand the uplift, like I said. So you will see total requests. Mind you, total requests in this specific context doesn't mean just your tracking events. These are all requests. This is your GTM download, your GTAG download, any sort of proxying of files that you may be doing. So be mindful of that. And there will be a percentage of those recovered from ad blockers. By recovered, we essentially mean that this was collected in an ad blocker environment. So where you're not running server-side tagging, where you're not running our custom loader, those events would just never be collected in the first place. And it's something that neither of your tracking destinations, your ads cabinets would have seen at all. And the other category is recovered from tracking prevention, which means that these were collected in an ITP environment, which means a little bit of a different thing. Those events would have been still collected, maybe even with the client side, but the quality of those events, especially the cookie, right? So the attribution sort of data accompanied with these events would be poorer because if you were not running this, those cookies would have potentially be gone by the time a conversion happens. And of course, we'll give you a more of a detailed breakdown. You have GA4 broken down by requests. So I think this is one of the interesting parts, especially if you're dealing with e-commerce. This would be your key sort of metric to show them that, hey, 35% of purchases actually happened in an ad blocker environment. And again, some of that in ITP, so Safari and such. Also, you want to, I mean, obviously, these percentages are subject. Oh, the graph is going crazy. Fun. These percentages are subject to your industry, right? Subject to your audience. Like a pet store versus something technical might have a very different crowd using it. Therefore, you can expect, one using more ad blockers rather than the other. So don't expect necessarily like crazy numbers here, but the average ad block usage on the internet is like 30 to 40%, I believe, globally. So there's this there's enough of an expectation that you'll be recovering at least some percentage. So something like 5%, I think, is a given, unless all of your audience are like, I don't know, grandmas. Wouldn't know. Bad joke. Uh, right. So GA4 is broken down. You have the same breakdown for our data client. If you need that granularity, same idea. You have the total of the each event that you're receiving. You have ad blockers on them. You have tracking prevention on them. You can see other requests, which is what I mentioned. There's the custom script load. There's the cookie keeper if you're using it. Obviously, the cookie keeper stats would be up to 100 because cookie keeper only functions in an ITP environment. So that's a given. There's some additional information if you run, like this says 0, but if you run our bot detection, you would have bot data here on your request. This is split by clients, GA4 and data client. You can also check your consent. These guys specifically are not running it, but you would also see your opt-in, opt-out based on your GA4 data, right? So we are not integrating with your consent banner or anything. We're just reading consent parameters in your GA4 requests, and that lets us show you the opt-in, opt-out rates. Naturally, this information is available in your CMP admin panel or your consent banner admin panel, but this is handy, and when you start the conversation with the customer, there will be some follow-up questions, and consent can be very informative, I think, in answering those, especially if you start comparing some periods and conversion rates and such. Last but not least, you have this request by browser breakdown, Safari, Chrome, and other. Again, I don't know if it's useful for this use case of ours, but this is additional piece of context that you can show them, hey, a ton of your customers are on Safari, let's say, or maybe not. Therefore, this or that feature may be called for, maybe not. So you get this baseline the moment you start using our custom loader power up, this thing. Once you enable that and you wait, guys from the chat can help me. We need a few days to collect some data because again, like I told you, we're showing aggregates. You will start seeing pretty much these stats here. So let's say you successfully pitched, you did a project, and the sort of a first line of you being able to show what's going on would be you can run a scanner to give them the updated report and compare it to the old one. You can go through your Stape analytics and to show them uplifts on certain events. You can show them the percentages that were recovered from ad blockers, from tracking prevention. And well, I believe that's a lot of data already. However, of course, somebody might not be trusting this. Somebody would want something more. So, of course, let's go back to our slides here. There's the obvious. You should be showing them impact in your specific platforms. This can be GE4, this can be Google Ads, this can be anything else. The idea is you should expect, given that you've made a correct implementation, you should expect to see more events logged in principle. Now, again, that percentage is very individual. It depends on a ton of different parameters, depends on your stack, depends on the situation and such. But on average, by default, you should see an increase if you've done everything right, at least a minor one, but it should be seen. So more events logged, which means more conversions logged. Drop in unassigned or direct traffic again. It's subjective. Can just happen with the switch to server side. Can potentially not happen because the cause of unassigned or direct was in a different place. Maybe there's something wrong with the implementation. That depends. More stable attribution. Again, if you do, let's say on Google Ads, if you do two conversion actions in parallel, one is your good old client side one, and maybe you run a secondary as a server side one for comparison. Ultimately, after at least like, I don't know, a couple of days, you should see that the server side conversions should be collecting more signal, which is the whole point, right? So even just logging into your ad account, where I imagine you probably are a lot of the time, you can show them numbers even there without resorting to our platform and like, without dealing with any sort of suspicions or such. And yeah, I was talking about Google Ads, and here I have a screenshot of specifically that case. So you can see we have a server-side GTM plus client simulator, server-side GTM plus client. What the hell is client simulator? I'm not sure. Anyway, you have a server-side conversion and you have a client-side conversion. And ultimately, you can see the one that is primary, which is server-side, has attributed what, 10, 9 more conversions and almost 6,000 in revenue. Platforms like Meta, for instance, I have an example here, will throw some flashy numbers at you. This is a real one, by the way. This is an extreme case for sure, but this is actually real. Screenshot from the interface where a company introduced CAPI into their mix, and this is what Facebook was showing them. So even the platforms themselves, because they are interested in getting more signal, getting more conversions, and well, for you to make your run your campaigns better, they will also show you indicators and stats that, hey, something has changed. Or maybe like with Meta, they will literally tell you, oh, we see you connected conversion API, and that means all of the following, right? 93 or whatever percentage is going to show you. If you hover over this little thing, it will also give you a stat. Meta and platforms like TikTok, like Snap, will start showing you what's called the match score, which is only available with the conversion API events. So all of that combined, plus the tooling that we've showed you on Stape side, you combine that in a report in a, I don't know, in a performance for your customer, right? Depending on what would be more suitable for them, and that combined should show you the result, the uplift, and the justification of what you have done in the past few weeks, I imagine, and that it actually makes sense, and you should continue along those lines. So I'm done with the slide part, more or less. My next point is to go into live Q&A, but yeah, I remember before I do that, for those in the audience who are not familiar, we have these beautiful agency accounts available on Stape. So if you're dealing with a ton of customers, you can create an agency account instead of logging in and sharing access between all of those users. So you can run an agency account that will let you separate, that will let you create sub accounts for your customers. You will be able to connect existing customers as your sub accounts as well. That gives you some insight into what's going on, with them, their subscription statuses. Do they maybe need to pay some attention to something? You can share access to the agency account across your organization if you have multiple roles or something like that. And of course, when you reach a certain threshold, which is 5 paid containers, you can maybe see this on the screenshot. We can roll you into the partnership program, which gives you up to 40% lifetime commission, so long as the customers, paying their subscription. You're getting a personal manager, might even get Surge eventually if you hope for it real good. We will offer some joint marketing for higher tier partners. We will give you a partner badge. We will list you in the directory, all the usual goodness. So just wanted to mention this for everyone who's not yet a partner. Please go ahead, register an agency account, reach out to us, let us know, and let us help you out. Right. With that out of the way, we only have questions, I think. So I'm going to stop sharing and dive into that Q&A you guys have left me. And it's a big one. All right. Okay. Okay, I'll go from the top. So Jason, trying to circumvent ad blockers, ITP, etc. to collect more data is often described as a cat and mouse game, with browsers implementing new restrictions and tracking companies finding new ways around them. How do you see this evolving over the next few years? And what would you say to people who think the strategy is shady or unethical? Okay, so there's two questions there. cat and mouse game. We call it that as well. I mean, yes, that's a cat and mouse game. Literally, that's the technological landscape of digital analytics and digital advertising, I think. So even though it is a cat and mouse game, that's just like a reality, I feel like. And if you want to be competitive, especially the higher your budgets on the ad platforms are, the more you want to participate in the cat and mouse game. And hopefully, you don't have to invent things. Sorry, not hopefully, but luckily, you don't have to invent anything because people like us have solved it for you. So you essentially have outsourced the cat and mouse game to your lovely vendor, to Stape, right? It's our pain to make sure that tomorrow when Safari hits you with a new limitation, that your tracking would already be ready for it. So that's one. The part about shady and unethical, I mean, that's very subjective, I want to say. I understand the concerns of somebody, and if you feel like this is unethical, well, don't do it. I mean, it's a simple answer, right? There's nothing illegal with this. You're not breaking any laws. All of this circumventing has this sort of negative energy, but we're not breaking any laws. We're not bypassing consent. There was one of the questions somewhere there, which I'm going to address as well. So the ethics of it, well, it's a judgment call whether you want to participate or not. We just give you that. We just give you that capacity. Do I personally, if anyone cares about my personal opinion, I don't think this is shady or unethical. Not really. The moment it becomes law, that's a different question. So I don't know if it's good enough of an answer, but that's my view. Rachel, what are the most common mistakes or misconceptions you see when teams first move to server-side tracking? So the most popular one is, will I bypass consent? Literally what I just talked about. So there's this sort of urban legend kind of thing. There's this expectation that you do server-side tracking and suddenly consent is not a concern of yours whatsoever, and you collect 100% of the data and everything is peachy. That's not quite true. I would say that's the biggest misconception. You are subject to consent and following user's decision all the way through, regardless whether it's happening on the server or not. So that would be my number one. We understand, ML, I don't know how to call you, sir. We understand that Stape.io server-side tracking is still mainly based on Google tools, GTM server-side and GE4. In GE4, we see that only a small portion of Microsoft ads clicks are correctly attributed as Microsoft ads, while Google Ads traffic is tracked almost completely. My question, is the expectation that server-side tracking with Stape.io will significantly improve Microsoft Ads attribution within GE4, or do you recommend considering non-Google Analytics alternatives for more reliable multi-platform attribution? Right. So this is a huge, multifaceted question. So let's try and break it down. We are mainly based on Google tools, GTM server-side, correct, GA4, not quite correct, because GTM server-side, at the end of the day, even though it's Google, is an agnostic tool. You can run whatever it is you want to run there and report to any analytics you want. It's not limited to GA4. Moreover, the benefits of the server side of it can also be reaped without using GA4 per se. Let's say you have another analytics platform and such. This whole thing, GTM server side and therefore Stape, still makes a lot of sense for you, even if you're not like focused on Google Stack. So that's one part of the answer. The other part of the answer is I wouldn't expect that a switch to server side improves your Microsoft Ads attribution within GA4. I'm thinking if you completely distrust the numbers that it gives you regarding Microsoft Ads as a channel that is attributed, you may potentially have some issues in how that is reported, or maybe with UTMs, which are generated by Microsoft or assigned yourself. Maybe there's some redirects where those UTMs get dropped. So I would explore it, server side or not, before just sort of saying, hey, this is GE4 being greedy and attributing everything to Google Ads, which it might just, but I'm saying the core of the issue probably is not in the fact that you're running client side, right? So should you use another analytics platform? Go ahead, try it. I think GE4 is still good enough, and I think your specific issue can be addressed even without server side potentially. Aviral. By the way, guys, if I'm gonna butcher your names, I apologize in advance. So Aviral, I guess. How does it help with better retargeting? Fewer tracking gaps. So tracking gaps still remain. How does it help with better retargeting? Let's do step by step. It helps with better retargeting by the virtue of prolonging cookies in a customer browser. Therefore, each time a remarketing hit, a conversion hit, anything hit happens, you will have more instances of that being accompanied with a proper cookie than you would otherwise. Therefore, it indirectly but improves all of your advertising efforts. Fewer tracking gaps, so the tracking gaps still remain. Of course, they remain. There's no 100% protection. I mean, this is internet after all. There's consent at the very least. So, and that, like we already discussed, we should be following it at all times. So, if we're following that, that already means we're not tracking 100%. So, yeah, there will be gaps. Sure, you just want to make them as small as possible. What do you mean by tracking CRM? I mean connecting your CRM to your server-side container. I mean when a record in your CRM changes its status, when your lead achieves qualification or something like that, your CRM can automatically push that to your server container. You can then distribute that event to a ton of destinations which you run for your campaigns. That's what we mean by tracking CRM. Do we have any ready demos that help visualize the difference clearly? I think I just went through analytics. That would be my answer, all of those tools. So the combination of that would be your visualization. Dominic, how would you say I can sell proposed SSD Stape to clients as a way to improve signal quality and decisional confidence? Well, again, this is a very broad question, but I think you sort of refactor everything we just told you today and just, focus more on what you said rather than maybe attribution reporting issues. Because the attribution reporting issues are not fixed directly. They are fixed by A, making sure that more signal is coming your way, B, making sure that cookies on your customer browsers stick. The same mechanisms, let's call it, will benefit both your decision making, if we're talking about analytics, and your attribution and such. So, probably a bit basic, but that's my answer. Daniel Perry Reed. Hey Dan, when using GA client, should we use FPID server cookie or the G_GA cookie with cookie keeper? What's better? What's the pros and cons of each? Does it matter? So FPID is a server-side cookie. _GA is a JavaScript cookie. That definition is the whole difference and the answer to the question. So JavaScript cookies will suffer in Safari, Firefox, and other tracking prevention heavy browsers. FPID will be less of a subject to that because it's set from the server. Cookie Keeper was mentioned here. Cookie Keeper would work with either, doesn't matter. Both would apply to Cookie Keeper. What's better? By default, if we don't dive into any nuances, by default, FPID, the server one, would be better. This is the whole point of the server-side tracking. Sometimes in very specific scenarios, you might use the JavaScript one, the _GA. Those scenarios would be some technical limitations where you, for some reason, are not able to set cookies from the server. That happens in certain narrow scenarios. There's also a weird application of it, which I don't quite like, but if you use JavaScript cookies, you can have your GA4 be client side and server side in parallel. So you could send only some events through the server and rest through the client, so long as it all runs on a JavaScript managed cookie. That would probably be your best case of why you want to do it. Otherwise, I say by default, stick to the server ones. That's the default setting actually in the GA4 client. So, right, next one. What's a good way to estimate total monthly requests? By the way, guys, I will have the time to finish all of your Q&A. So if you have time to stick, please stick with us. What's a good way to estimate total monthly requests when we plan to use Stape and GA clients, custom loader, cookie keeper, etc.? The calculator is great, but using the volume of GA events is often underestimating the total requests, especially with things like GA client making multiple requests for cookies and stuff like that. Well, I know where you're coming from. This is a great question. I still want to say that the calculator is your best bet simply because we've plugged into it some average percentages to try and account for all of these shenanigans that you mentioned for the set cookie request by GE4, for the script download requests and such. Again, that's an approximation. Obviously, we can't do it. I don't think we can do it better at this point without asking you for 1,000 different data points, which you don't necessarily have. So if the calculator is not sufficient, I think your next best bet would be, well, run it for a few days and sort of infer from that.
Yeah, you can
At least,
also enable,
yeah.
yeah, sorry Dan for yeah. So you can also enable the auto scaling, auto upgrade feature. So you can start with a lower plan, let's say, lower paid plan. If the auto update is enabled, you will just be scaled to the right plan according to your client's traffic. So you can also go this way.
Well, yeah, that if you drop any estimation whatsoever, it just like wing it. Yeah, that's also true. That can be done. So yeah, calculator I think is your best bet. Again, if you have the capacity, run it live for a day, and well, ideally run it for a month, then even better. But yeah, just infer from live data. Uh, Ilya, for which client profiles do you explicitly say server side is not worth it yet? Well, I never say that. They would fire me for it.
Are we even allowed to
But
say that? We are not even allowed to say that, guys.
I
Come
don't
on.
think we're allowed to say that. But honestly, if they don't run any paid ads, then maybe it's not worth it, right? If they're not spending budgets on advertising, well, then they would get better analytics. But if they're not spending anything on advertising, I don't even know if they need that analytics in the first place. So literally, somebody who's not spending on ads, I would say you can say, yeah, okay, do client side. June, even with SST, you still need client-side pixels for ad performance, right? So you don't reduce the amount of scripts on the client side. Well, this is tricky. Yes and no, and that's the horrible answer, I know, but like here's the situation. So like let's let's say Meta, for example, and I think somewhere deep down I have a question about Meta, so let's answer two in one go. Uh and I lost the question, sorry. Here it is. Right. So by default, yes, because the platforms will tell you you want to run hybrid reporting. The platforms normally will expect web will rely by default on the client side traffic, and the server side will be used as a sort of redundancy, as a fallback if something is wrong with the web one. That is happening mostly because there is still Google Chrome, who still supports third-party cookie, which enables those pixels to collect third-party cookies and attribute view-through conversions. So by default, the answer is yes. But with certain platforms in certain situations, you may forego that and still rely only on the server side and don't load anything on the client. If you remember when I showed you the report for Stape, we don't run Metapixel, we don't run Reddit Pixel, we only do them server side. That is suboptimal in the book of the law, but we're okay with that. We made that decision for the benefit of the page speed specifically. Amir, hello. We had a problem with tracking meta campaigns because of compliance limits. We are using Stape to solve this problem, but it still does not track events. Well, the answer, Amir, is in your compliance, right? I imagine what's happening is your business is categorized by Meta as such that, you know, has some limitations. Therefore, they're not accepting certain events, which is what they normally do. You can dance around it a little bit. You can do custom events and such, but at the end of the day, you should be compliant and you should be, following what they tell you. This is a kind of cat and mouse game I wouldn't suggest playing with because this is literally in the legal dimension. So can't give you good advice there. Do we really need client-side pixel tracking when we have server-side? Oh, I just sort of kind of covered that, right? So yes. Then to expand on it, if you run an experiment in in the wild, what do you call it? What's the word? The fact that you have the client side on it will probably give you 1-2% more of a conversion on average, right? Again, might be very different on a different industry, different audience, different everything. So it is sort of empiric and factual that if you run the hybrid method with Meta specifically, you should have more results. mostly this is informed by what I said. This is informed by the presence of the third-party cookie, which lets you stitch cross-domain, rather not you, but Meta, which lets you stitch cross-domain journey and such, which lets you attribute view-through conversions. But then again, can you live with just Cappy? Yes, you definitely can. And you will always be in this situation where you're juggling, do I invest more into page speed or these percent and a half is more important for me? Probably depends on your scale. I would say if you go towards the larger end, enterprises and such, they will start playing the page speed game and maybe not do client side more than a smaller company would. Uh, Alexei, thanks. And for underscore GCLLW or underscore GCLGB, I see 7 days. Can it be extended with Stape? So underscore GCLAW is your click ID, if I remember correctly. The cookie that will be set with server side would be FBGCLAW. So that one will be living for more than 7 days, and that's the answer to your question. So not this cookie specifically, but its alternative, its server-side alternative, yes. All right. Shane, I have a client that is in healthcare. We are their biggest issues from what are their biggest issues from a privacy and security perspective, given that they only have GTMG for client-side tracking in place? I would like to let them know how this is causing them potential risk and privacy rule issues. So I'm only going to give you an abstract answer, not a lawyer, but their biggest issues would be in the fact that GE4 is collecting some data that it's not necessarily allowed to collect. Something that can be considered health information, potentially. I don't know if that's the case. So I want to say you need to consult with a lawyer or a DPO internally if you have one and decide the stuff that is currently in their GE4, does that comply with the regulation or it doesn't comply? If it doesn't, one of the simplest ways to remove things from GE4 is server side because you have this middleware where you can redact all of the data, remove everything that wouldn't be wouldn't be compliant, wouldn't be needed. So I don't know per se, but it all boils down to, hey, potentially you're collecting something you shouldn't be. So that's the answer. Okay. Is there a reason South African clients and agencies are told they cannot use Stape as SA? I don't know. Oh, South Africa uses GDPR based for compliance. No, I don't think. I don't. I mean, Mr. Anonymous, please reach out to us with a specific case if you have one. I haven't heard about this, but I think they definitely can use Stape because whatever South African regulation we might not have like a specific certification, but I'm sure most of the tenants of it are already in GDPR, so technically we are already following a ton of it. But again, if it's based on a actual example, please reach out. You know, we'll deal with it. Balash, by the way, thank you for answering to Shane. That's a very good point. LinkedIn is known to collect whatever on the client, regardless of any sort of settings. So this is one good example. Mikhail the Fifth. Wow. Okay. What monthly Google Ads budget or conversion volume makes sense to pitch to you to your service price wise? I don't know. Sir, do you have an answer for that? Do you have a number?
And like to which clients, like how much they should spend
No, I'm
to
thinking
make
like
a
it's
good
like
use. Yeah.
at which budget they
Yeah,
should
it makes sense to
deal
use
with.
Stape. I mean, I don't have a set price, set
It
number
depends.
in my head.
I think
Yeah.
again, here's a cop-out answer. It depends on how you evaluate, you know, how you evaluate that justification. So let's say they spend X, whatever they spend, the uplift would be proportional, right? So I'm meaning like the server side as a technology will give them more conversion, more cookie lengths, such and such. So like if they're spending $5, probably not. But if they're getting anywhere, I don't want to name numbers, guys. I don't know. It's it's complicated. But let's say this, if they're in the thousands, not in the hundreds, definitely worth considering because potentially they're in the thousands and the investment at the server side would cost them like $20 for the server, maybe something for your work as well. Combine that, that makes sense already. But if they're just like dabbling or running some test campaigns, obviously don't waste your time. Andre, what's your view on today's market in EU? It's mature enough, and the majority of advertisers understand that server side is a must if they want to succeed, or do you still feel like there are many advertisers? Oh, this is a personal opinion, by the way, but I feel like we have this distorted view of the market as mature and everybody talks server side because you are in this space. And if you log into LinkedIn, probably your feed is all about that, right? I think in general, that's very not true. We still see in the wild examples of people not even running consent banners, forget about any server side and attribution and anything. And that's especially true the smaller the business is, like there's individual shop owners and such. So I want to say it's rather average than very, very mature. I guess depends on who you're talking to. Sergio, for second order thinking, what are the consequences of the consequences? Meaning, what are the consequences of the consequences of not setting up advanced server-side tracking with Stape? I think this is deeper, valuable meta question that can be used in client conversation. Lost conversions, it boils down to less data, less quality of data. If you want to put it in a sentence,
But it's a
that's
great way to
that's the
twist it, right?
consequence.
It's a crazy twist. What are the consequences of not implementing server-side tracking?
Well, that's two
We'll use that.
salespeople talking to each
We
other.
will use that.
Probably,
We'll
right?
definitely
You
use that.
guys are both Surge, essentially, so
Yeah.
probably. Yeah. No, that's a good one. Yeah, but I think you also can put it like this: you're missing out compared to your competitor. If you have a very similar business in competition with you, and they're doing this, and you're not doing this, well, you're losing, kind of, at least in that area, right? Or you start losing. I don't know. Gabrielle, will you ever make a guide to create an export tag in Google Sheets to have the formatted data that Google Ads require for qualified lead and converted lead conversions? Okay, let me read that again. So, will we ever make a guide to create an export tag in Google Sheets to have the formatted data that Google Ads requires for qualified lead? I think Google, okay, if I understand the question correctly, so Google gives you an example of that CSV. If you want to load it as files, I think Google has one. We should find it. But since we gather here for the server side of it, I think you should automate it. There shouldn't be a Google Sheet or anything. Or if you do your lead qualification in a Google Sheet, you want to whip up a script. That's easy in Google Sheet. Your favorite LLM will help you whip up a script to send that data to a server container, to an endpoint of your server container. And you will never be loading any CSVs ever again, and you will just load those conversions in real time compared to the Google Sheet. Anonymous attendee. In which cases is it essential to use the cookie prefix in the GE4 config tag? Will you be doing so? I don't know if I'm going to do a webinar on that or not. It is essential if you're running multiple properties, because by that you make sure that you can you explicitly control the cookie naming, and you kind of indirectly then make sure that the wrong cookie will not be used by a different measurement ID. Daniel, no question. Just wanted to say thanks, Dan, Serge, and the Stape team for. Oh, thank you, good sir. Come again. Right. In Sala platform, there is no option for linking domain with Cloudflare. How same origin approach in this case, or is there a workaround? Well, that I assume is if your domain is bought on Sala, right? Because if it isn't, still can be done. Anyway, Bilal, I think reach out to our support, throw a ticket. You can mention me if you want, and we'll figure something out. Just need probably more input than we have at this time. All right, I think I'm almost at the end. Yay. Swapnil, by setting up Stape server-side tracking, can we get the same number of meta purchases recorded as meta campaigns shown in the Shopify marketing dashboard? Because I'm facing a challenge where Meta dashboard shows 100 purchases in a month and Shopify only 10 to 15 every month. I have Stape server-side tracking configured on Shopify store since last 2 months. So a basic question I want to ask and for you to consider is, are you looking at Events Manager or are you looking at Ads Manager? And then Andre is helping me. Do you have apps installed would be also a good dimension to check. But I just want to make sure that you're comparing the right thing, right? So again, Shopify Ad Manager data, Ads Manager. So it attributed 100 conversions, and then Shopify attributed 10 to 15. Well, so Meta will attribute based on two things. It will attribute based on the click ID, the FBC. It will attribute based on potentially PII if you're sending out on purchase, which I'm sure you do. I don't have a comment on how Shopify does their analytics and how they attribute it. So if you're looking at it as potentially Meta is like being greedy and over attributing or something like that, I would suggest a bit of a tedious, but an exercise of combing through your logs. So you can set up logging on Stape for a purchase event only for Meta. You can then export that and look through your purchase events and see how much of those, for instance, contain an FB click, right? The FBC, the click ID. That wouldn't be like extensive information. That would inform you enough already. It might so happen that you'll see enough of an amount that you'll say, oh yeah, of course, 100. I have these click IDs here, right? Maybe not, but I would start my investigation there. But a high level advice is you shouldn't really be comparing those. Like Shopify will always have their own attribution methods. Meta will have their own. Moreover, Meta has a horse in this game, right? They are kind of interested in showing you as much as possible. So I don't think they should be directly compared. But if you have your doubts, I would start with, well, first of all, quality of your setup in principle. But if you're happy with that, then I would start doing logging and checking that stuff and just, analyzing, drawing some conclusions. Anonymous attendee, I have many small clients. What is the minimum ad spend that would make SST worthwhile? We already answered that. There isn't one, right? There isn't one, but if it's not only budgets, it's also like how serious about they are about those campaigns. They might be not spending too much, but they're investing time and effort into it, into campaign optimization, into making decisions and such. Probably that is done by somebody who is paid to also on a salary or maybe a consultant, right? So you can account for that dimension as well. So are they like active on their advertising? Then it already makes sense. Yeah, namesakes in a way. Thank you for praising my question. I'm glad I'll use in your sales conversations now. Okay, yeah, man, and you won a t-shirt. Congratulations to you as well. You're one of the three. Hey. Uh, right, guys, I think I went through the entirety of the Q&A. At least I don't have anything else here. So Sergio is one person who's getting a t-shirt. Thank you for that inverted logic. That was great. Dan Perry Reed gets another one because he dropped, I don't know, like 4 or 5 decent questions. And to pick somebody number 3, give me a quick second because I can't process quick enough. Uh, well, let's do Jason. Jason had a few beautiful questions, and the ethics one is always complicated. So, Jason, hey, you get a three, you get a third one.
I would also like to highlight Shane's question about healthcare clients. So let's have 4 t-shirts then.
Oh, sure. No, I mean, I can't argue with this guy. 4 it is. So, thanks
Then maybe you
everyone.
will, I'm sorry, then maybe you will check also our chat and we can give one more t-shirt. Just a quick one.
Yeah, what are the most common?
June.
Okay, June, right. Yeah. You think of it as a state team. Like these guys made me do it. So anyway, I'm just joking. Yeah, June, you get the first one. So that would be it. Thank you everybody for joining. This has been a blast. Thank you for your questions. I want to remind you that you're going to get your recording as usual with some follow-up, as well as we hold these webinars every month. So stay tuned, come by and have a good evening. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for your time. See you next time. Bye bye.